This episode of Shaun of the South is brought to you by Case Knives, a tradition of my family dating back to my granddaddy, who once said the best cure for idle hands was to build something, so keep your hands sharp with a Case knife. And by WNC Original Music, my buddy Ron Taylor at WNC Original Music curates the music for this show every single week, bringing to you the best bands in America, independent and otherwise. Do yourself a favor and visit my buddy, WNC Original Music Podcast. You will not regret it. And by Folklore Brewing and Meadery, quite literally the best brew in Alabama. Visit folklorebrewingandmeadery.com. And now let's have a tune here from the Crickets.
Sitting on the banks of the Magnolia River, trying to figure out which way I should go. I could head upstream to the cool springs, find the bottom of the bottomless cold hole. If I head downstream on this winding river, I'll eventually end up in warm Weeks Bay. Who's to say which way is better? The decision's mine at the end of the day. Cool waters take me home to the world to leave me alone. Cool waters let me roam. Cool waters take me home, take me home. I could sell my soul and do exactly as I'm told, but you know that ain't the way that I'm wired. I will follow my heart through the shadows in the dark, 'cause the sun will shine on my back someday. Cool waters take me home to the world to leave me alone. Cool waters let me roam. Cool waters take me home, take me home. Let the magnolia trees sweep away my indecisions. Let me free my mind and let it be. Oh, let it be. Hey. Cool waters take me home to the world to leave me alone. Cool waters let me roam. Cool waters take me home, take me home.
This portion of our program is brought to you by visitnorthalabama.org, the Mountain Lakes Tourist Association. Visit the 16 North Alabama counties that make this state what it is. The Alabama Bass Fishing Trail features 13 of Alabama's premier bass fishing lakes and stretches from the mountains of North Alabama heading south to the Mobile Bay. You might lie awake at night sometimes and wonder if you're a fisherman or not. Well, here's a litmus test for you. It's very easy. You can do it in the privacy of your own home. Look in your refrigerator, and if you see tartar sauce inside or cans of beer, you are a fisherman. Whatever you do, you can do it better in North Alabama, so visit northalabama.org or hashtag visitnorthal.
In 1953, my grandpa always sky at the end of the day. And I wanna go back to Alabama. I wanna lay underneath the pine. And I wanna go back to Alabama, to that sweet home of mine. On his way to Kansas, he was thinking about his life and all the memories that have made it right. He was searching for something that he just can't find. Something always takes him back to this special place of mine. And I wanna go back to Alabama. I wanna lay underneath the pine. And I wanna go back to Alabama, to that sweet home of mine, to that sweet home of mine, to this sweet home of mine.
Well, I'd like to interrupt this broadcast and bring you a public service announcement from your local church ladies. Your local church ladies are concerned that the last visit you made to the doctor gave you too clean of a bill of health. They would like to help you out in this situation by making for you casseroles with more saturated fat and cholesterol than legally allowed by U.S. standards. Go visit your local church lady today and she can help you put on extra weight, increase your cholesterol count, and of course, help your blood pressure skyrocket through the roof with cornflake and potato casserole that will bless your heart, blow your mind, and make a believer out of you. This has been a public service announcement for the local Church Lady Union, chapter number 5.
Run on down through tall green fields, blades of grass slip through my hands. Your letter said a fortnight's wait. Here I stand where it all began. Am I waiting in vain for your ship to return? The nights are so lonely and the days seem so long, and I will wait all my life and I'll call to the sea. Bring back my lover, bring him to me. Babes are all grown, farm fell apart, no money in the mine, our luck has run out, sailed off in boat for this war you wage. Though I be blue, I'm still waiting for you. Am I waiting in vain for your ship to return? The nights are so lonely and the days seem so long, and I will wait all my life and I'll call to the sea. Bring back my lover, bring him to me. Does the ship bring you to me? Is your soul claimed by the sea? Am I waiting in vain for your ship to return? The nights are so lonely and the days seem so long, and I will wait all my life, and I'll call to the sea. Bring back my lover, bring him to me. Bring back my lover, bring back my lover, bring him to me. Bring back my lover, bring back my lover, bring back my lover, bring him to me.
Well, you are listening to Sean of the South, and I'm your host today, Sean Dietrich, and man, it is a bona fide pleasure coming to you live via the podcast airwaves, the radio waves all over this fine nation are coming to you through your minivan stereo speakers of your car, stereo speakers of them little tiny speakers embedded in the bottom of your cell phone, if that's how you listen to podcasts, without earbuds or earphones, because you are poor. And if you are, well, join the crowd. I can understand this in a deep way. Besides, you wouldn't want to be one of them people who puts that Bluetooth stuff inside their ears and listens to stuff in public and then, laughs and talks about it while you're in public. I mean, everybody looks at you a little funny. You don't want to be one of those people. So it's a good thing that you're listening to it through the little speakers, because if you are, that means you are doing it in private. And if you're doing it in private, that means that I can say things without having to draw the attention of other people, onlookers, who are looking at you saying, why are you listening to this fool? Which brings up an important point. Why are you listening to this fool? I have listened to a few of the podcasts that came out of this little studio that they recorded, and I'm going to tell you, I think they're terrible. I really do. I mean, not just terrible, but god-awful, which is another level altogether. I mean, the one thing that's really weird to me is the voice, okay? When I speak to you, they do something kind of funky to it behind that recording booth glass, and it sounds like I am one of them, folks on talk radio where I'm just real flat and emotionless and nothing comes through my voice. And it's weird. My wife didn't even recognize, my voice. Well, I guess that's just the price you pay when you do one of these things. So if you're listening to this is just a good time to turn it off and do something positive for yourself. Listen to some music, enjoy a book. You don't have to listen to this garbage. But if you are, you must really be hard up. And if you're really hard up and you're listening to this to pass the time, after I offer you my sincerest apologies, I do want to tell you that I actually do have something I want to talk about today. Something that I have been thinking about a lot lately, because my mother gave me a big old cardboard box of old family photographs. And she gave it to me because it had been sitting in her attic, and she thought perhaps a leak had been coming down, and she wanted to put it in a safe place. Well, I got this closet. Every closet in my house is owned by my wife, and we're not allowed to use these closets for anything but storage. Even our own personal bedroom closet. Our personal bedroom closet is about 95% my wife's clothing, 4% my wife's shoes, and 1% my clothes. I'm only allowed very, very small and meager clothing items because that's all I can fit in my closet. My wife has staked claim over our closet a long time ago. So if you see me in public only wearing my one pair of pants and shirt and my pair of shoes that I've had since the Reagan administration, now you know why. Well, my mother gave me this box. It was faded and brown. It had that Sharpie letters on the sides that said family photos. And I looked at it and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. There are photos in there that date all the way back to the early 1900s. There's a photo of my of my great-grandparents and a photo of my grandfather when he was just a little tiny boy. He was born in 1911, and he's just dressed like they used to dress in 1911. You know, a long time ago, men who were born in the early 1900s and even in the late 1800s and early 1800s, they wore dresses. Boys, not men, I'm sorry. Boys wore dresses. That was the main fashion for children who were infant to toddlerhood. Dresses. Big old white lacy dresses. And they get their portraits made in these dresses. Very interesting to watch, I have to tell you, when your wife looks at some photograph that looks just like you. I look a lot like my grandfather. Looks just like you, only you wearing a dress. She kind of looks at you just sideways. But after sifting through these photographs of my grandfather and my grandmother, and then photos from the 1940s and in the war era, when my grandmother and my grandfather were dancing, and he's wearing his Air Corps uniform, not Air Force, Air Corps. Air Corps was an extension of the Army before the Air Force, and he was a member of the Air Corps before it went to the Air Force. And my grandmother looks so beautiful. She's got that hair that's rolled in them coffee can rolls that them girls used to use way back in the 40s. And she's holding on to my grandfather's coat, and she's smiling with that trademarked smile that they have. And my grandfather's looking at the camera, and I love these pictures. And then I sift through these, and I get to the 1950s and 1960s when the hairstyles change and the Brylcreem usage goes considerably up and is more prevalent in the U.S. And now we're looking at me. Now there's all my pictures, and I could hardly stand it. Now, nobody tells you that when you're growing up, you're getting your picture taken all the time. My father believed in taking a lot of pictures because he grew up he didn't have a whole lot of money. And he remarked one time to me that he was a little bit disappointed that when he was growing up, nobody ever took any pictures of him. And so by the time he was an adult, he realized he didn't have no pictures of himself. And he said he wasn't going to do that to me. So my father always had a little camera. He had one of them brownie cameras that he just carried everywhere. He just Now back then we used film, and today they use digital. You can take considerably more pictures, so it actually cost my father a little bit of money. He was always buying film. He was always snapping pictures of me doing the most stupid things, and because of this, I have a well-documented childhood. And you can look at my pictures, and you can see me go. I've changed hair colors 3 times in my life. When I was first born, I had copper-colored hair. Oh, man. My mother says it was the shade of a new penny. Copper-colored hair. As soon as I came out the womb, I had this copper-colored hair. And then my hair changed, and I went to a platinum blonde, just for a little bit. Platinum blonde hair. And then I changed back to a redhead. More of an auburn color red. That was me. And of course, something else happened to me. I got chubby. Now, this is hard for me to talk about. You have boys in this life, girls in this life, who look in the mirror when they're growing up, and they see this reflection looking back at them. And this reflection is round and chubby. Once you have seen yourself this way, and your mind has grown to accept this image of you, that's it. For the rest of your life, you will see yourself as a little butterball turkey. I can be walking past the mirror today, and today I'm kind of skinny. I grew out of that chubbiness, like my mother said I would. When I was 16 years old, she just like my mother had predicted, I grew out of my chubbiness. And so now when I look in the mirror, I see a 6'1" skinny guy with legs that look like a man who's riding a chicken across the front yard, and I've got no shape at all. But in my mind, I see little chubby butterball honey boo boo. That's me. I am not one of them people who can look in the mirror and see a good looking person looking back at them. Now, I have friends who have they've grown to love their own reflection. Maybe they were told that they were a nice-looking child all their life, and they just believed it. Or maybe they really, truly were just an exceptional human being, even though everybody kind of gets awkward and somewhat ugly during their teenage years, even just for a week or so, and everybody gets zits and all that. Somehow these kids navigated through that, and they just turned out beautiful, and they were always beautiful. Well, not me. First of all, beauty just never ran in my family. And I would look at myself in the mirror when I was growing up, and I would see this chubby child, and I would just cringe. I did not like my own reflection. I did not like myself. I had this pale white skin that looked like the same shade of Elmer's glue, and I had these buckshot freckles, and my teeth always were funky. I always had funky teeth. I had 2 Bugs Bunny buck front teeth, so that when I smiled, my lips could hardly get over these 2 front teeth. And even today, when I smile big, all you see are the 2 Bugs Bunny front teeth. I look like a beaver on his way to chop down a few logs and build himself a dam. I was not a good-looking child, and in these photographs that I was looking at, I was just humiliated in front of myself. Really, truly humiliated. Childhood is hard. Childhood is it leads you into teenagehood, which is even harder. And then you go through your young adulthood, and that is triple hard. But childhood starts all this. Well, in some of these pictures, I'm seeing some things I'd like to forget. Nobody tells you that memories can be painful. They really can wound you all over again. And I looked at these pictures that my mother gave me in that brown cardboard box, and I just was sick to my stomach. It was worse than I had remembered. I was not just, not good looking. I was flat out ugly. And I don't mean to talk bad about myself because that's not fair. Because I've always seen the different versions of myself in my life as separate versions of me. You have young you. You have adolescent you, and you have 20-year-old you, and you have adult you, and married you, and if you got kids, you got the parental you. Well, I see all these different me's, and I like to exert a little bit of sympathy toward these me's. But I do want to tell you the truth. When I saw that picture of young me, the first picture I saw, I had this pink polo shirt on. I don't know why my mother decided to put me in a pink polo shirt. Good Lord. And it was a little bit tight. And it was tucked in to a pair of jeans. Now, what kind of dork tucks his shirt into a pair of jeans? Well, we did. But when you're a chubby child, this is not something you want immortalized on film. This picture of a young, chubby boy who looks like you could roll him down the hallway with his shirt tucked into a pair of jeans. Now, pink doesn't go well with red hair. That's another issue that I'll leave alone. How my mother let me leave the house like this, I'll never know. But I hated this photograph. Even today, I hated this photograph. So I flipped through it and I found another photo. There I was. Somebody in their craziness gave me a tank top. A tank top. Who in their right mind lets a child wear a tank top? But going a step further, who in their right mind lets a chubby child wear a tank top and then goes even another step further and takes a picture of him and immortalizes that photograph on celluloid film, places it into a cardboard box so that child can remember this moment for the rest of his life? There I was in this yellow tank top looking like a fool. My God. I flipped past it and there were more. It never ended. There were just photographs of me looking as bad as you can stand. And I was sick. I'm not going to lie. I was sick for, 2 days. 2 days I could not stand the thought that my childhood had been this bad. And I was feeling pretty bad about it. Well, my sister had a belated birthday party across town, over on the bay. And my wife and I drove in from I had just done a show in Fairhope, Alabama. This was a few nights ago. And we drove in coming in hot. We drive a little plumber's van is what I call it. When we started traveling full time and doing the show with various bands and such in different towns, we had to get wheels for transportation. And we looked at everything that was cheap and used and would house all of our crap. Because my wife is incapable of crossing the street without loading something to capacity. Well, the thing that had the most cubic square inches of storage was this thing called a Ford Transit Connect. And basically, it is the same kind of van that people who work for LabCorp and come to your place of employment to collect stool samples drive. So this is my vehicle. We pull into some tiny town to do some show, and everybody's looking around for something else a whole lot more masculine, and we pull up in this little 4-cylinder stool sample van, and they see us crawl out, and they don't really know what to think. So we pulled into this large line of traffic that was outside my sister's brother-in-law's house for a surprise birthday party that had been planned for weeks and weeks and weeks. And my wife and I had been on the road for 9 days, and we were tired and we were a little bit hungry, and the dogs were waiting at home for us. And we pulled into this little parallel parking space. My wife is an excellent parallel parker. If it had been left up to me, there would have been 4 damaged cars. And we run out of that car across the street because we're late. We're always late. And I'm sorry for that. If anybody listening to this has ever been burned by me being late, this is my sincere apology. We crawled through this little gate in the backyard, and the backyard was lit up to beat the band. There were these cocktail lights strung from the top. There was a bluegrass band playing, and there were people milling about, everybody, all kinds of people. There were dogs and cats and children and adults and politicians and little toddlers running around in poopy diapers. And I found my mother back there. And she was in the corner by this, if you can believe it, she was standing by a keg of beer. My mother. She's a little woman. She's about 5'2". Well, she used to be 5'2". Today she is 5 foot. Women tend to shrink when they get older. And she was standing by this little keg that had these nozzles coming out of it, and she was holding a solo cup. My mother, a solo cup. And she said it was a Miller Lite in her hand. My mother drinking a Miller Lite. Now, this is a modern marvel. Especially when you consider that my mother is the kind of woman who, when I was growing up, always closed her eyes during Rock of Ages or any Ronnie Millsap song. She was the kind of woman who, whenever we would get the Sears catalog in the mail, she would douse it in lighter fluid and set it on fire in a tin bucket because this catalog contained images of advertisements for women's underwear that I could not be allowed to see. This is a woman who did not believe in premarital relations because it could lead to dancing. Think about that if you have to for a second. And there she is drinking a Miller Lite. Not even a good beer, but a Miller Lite. I ain't got nothing against Miller Lite, but I'd much rather have a Pabst Blue Ribbon or a Budweiser, the real kind of Budweiser. I don't know how they make a beer light except by, adding raccoon snot. And she said, "Can I get you a beer?" And I about fell over. I looked at her and I said, "Yes, I'll take a beer." She went over and she got me a beer. We were waiting on my sister to arrive. She was going to arrive, and we were all supposed to yell surprise. And all these people are milling about. And there's a kid running around, this little boy. And he is, so help me, he is over there in the corner shoving mud up his nose. And my mom and I are looking at this boy. And I am holding this solo cup with my mother. And we start sharing memories. This is a long American pastime, shared memories. You know how it goes. When somebody offers a memory, you offer another memory. And these memories, they're only supposed to be about 1 sentence long. Anything more than that, such as 30 so minutes like what you're hearing today is totally boring and will absolutely make you fall asleep. I have had letters since we switched the formats saying that people are using these podcasts as sleep aids. They have been proven to be more effective than chemical pharmaceuticals. So you're welcome if you are using this to fall asleep. And I hope you have sweet dreams. And I'll see you tomorrow. You share one sentence and you just talk. It's not a complicated thing to share memories. My mother would say, you remember that one time when we broke down on the side of the road? And I counter back with, yeah, do you remember that one time when we were, driving along so-and-so? And she counters back with, hey, do you remember that time we went to San Antonio? San Antonio. And I look at her and I say, yeah, I remember that time. And I will never forget that time. I could never forget that time if I ever tried. Because in San Antonio, I was a little boy and I was on a tour boat with my mother. And I was leaning over the side, this little chubby boy leaning over the side looking into the river on this tour boat. There was a Mexican man who was giving this tour. And I fell clean off the side and I hit the water and splashed and sunk like a chubby little cinder block. This was humiliating. Of all the humiliations, this is one of the most, because this little Mexican man had to pull me out the water, and he got me out and onto the boat, and I was sitting on the bow of the boat, this chubby little fat kid, and everybody on the tour boat was looking straight at me, and I was just mortified. This was the pinnacle of my humiliation. I sat on the bow of that boat dripping wet with this huge puddle beneath me, and the only thing worse than being a chubby boy is being a chubby, wet boy, because the clothing that you are wearing sticks to the curvature of your body, revealing your cable TV figure. You look worse than you do in real life when you're wet. But this Mexican man was cracking jokes that were part of the tour guide patter. He looked over at me, and he saw me humiliated there. And he got this Texas flag, state flag towel, beach towel, and he wrapped me in it. He wrapped me in that towel, and I felt a whole lot better, and I am a Floridian. But as of that day forward, I have been a Texas fan ever since. Now, don't misunderstand me. I don't mean Texas the team, college team. I mean Texas the state. It was a sweet, sweet act that man did. And I looked at him while he'd given me that towel, and I noticed something about him. He was chubby too, but it just didn't seem to bother him. He was comfortable with himself. Mother and I were sharing that memory, and it all came back to me. The humiliation. Good Lord. Every memory that I ever had around that childhood church potluck table when the women used to bring them casseroles in with the diced potatoes and the cream of chicken soup and the 10 gallons of melted cheese topped with cornflakes on top. And I would always go back and get thirds and fourths and fifths and sixths. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The world would be a better place if women would make more of that potato, cheese, cornflake casserole. And so my mother and I were interrupted by these children running around, shoving, dirt up their noses. And then someone said, shh, she's here. And everybody got deathly quiet. And we saw the gate open and my sister burst through beneath the glow of them cocktail lights with her husband and her children with her. And everybody yelled, surprise! And we all clapped for her, and my mother raised her beer. And my wife raised her beer, and I raised my beer. And I saw my sister run through and hug all her friends. There were lots of them there. And I didn't see a sister there before me. I didn't see a 30-year-old woman. I saw a little rosy-cheeked child. I saw a child with a pale complexion and curly, blondish dishwater hair like my sister had. I saw a girl who used to dress up, bundle up for for the cold weather, and she'd run outside and she'd play with the stray dogs and the stray cats. Saw a girl who always was a little bit afraid of the weather, who was a little bit chubby as a child. I saw a girl who had cried on my shoulder many different times during her teenage career, because girls tend to be a little bit dramatic when they don't have fathers, and we brothers try our best, but we screw up a lot, and I screwed up a lot. And I looked at her, the picture of womanhood. She looks so much like my mother. I've got these pictures of my mother when she was a senior in high school. Beautiful. She looks a lot like that woman in the photographs from World War II with them coffee can curls, her own mother. And my sister bears those marks of that beauty that's been passed down from generation to generation. But my sister, she doesn't see it. She looks into the mirror and she still sees that little thing looking back at her, the same way I do. I guess what I'm saying is maybe we're incapable of seeing what we are. You know, we know too much about ourselves. We've got a backstage pass. We can see ourselves from behind. And I'm going to tell you, I don't look good from behind. She came over, my sister, and she saw my mother and I. We were drinking from our solo cups, and she gave us a hug. And I said, "Happy birthday, Sarah." She hugged my mother. My mother said the same thing, and then my mother trotted away, and I saw my mother smiling with all her friends, and then she came back to me, and she looked over at my sister. She said, "Can you believe your sister's grown up? Can you believe how big she is?" I said, "No, I can't. She's an adult now." She said, "Isn't it funny? Isn't growing up funny?" And that was all she said. I looked over to my left, and I saw this little boy who was shoving mud into his nostrils. I mean, he was getting it way up there. I just smiled at him. He was a little bit round. He had kind of a curly set of hair. He had no idea how cute he was. Maybe you don't either. I know I sure didn't. But we're still here, and we're still trucking. And thank God for the Texas flag. Hey, thanks for listening to Sean of the South. I've been your host today, Sean Dietrich, and man, it's been a bona fide pleasure. This episode was brought to you by Case Knives, a tradition in my family dating back to my granddaddy, who once said the best cure for idle hands was to build something. So keep your hands sharp with a Case knife. That music you heard behind me today was the Crickets, a female Americana group from the Gulf Coast, right in my backyard, whose music is what Paste magazine calls a truly stunning, one-of-a-kind sound. I have been fortunate enough to share the stage with these ladies, and they are good, not just good, but world-class good. Their title track from their 2018 album, Red Bird, was just named Alternative Country Song of the Year at the 2019 Independent Music Awards. Do yourself a kindness and visit them online. Look them up at the Crickets, Krickets, and download their music today. You will not regret it. To find out anything more about what I do, you can visit SeanOfTheSouthShow.com, and there you can find archived episodes dating back to our first episode all the way to this episode, which you just heard, though I don't know why. You must have a terrible taste in podcasts. And while you're there, I hope you get the time to drop me a line. Tell me about your birthday announcements, wedding invitations, and potluck socials, and I do my best to read them over there for my friends when we do our live shows, because I love to do that sort of stuff for my friends. And speaking of friends, when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high. Don't be afraid of the dark, because that's what Elvis said. Adios.